Got it. I'll turn your plot points into a full, self-contained General Hospital article with a coherent structure, expanded drama, and entirely different wording from the original. I'll keep it around 10,000 characters, immersive, and logical, while connecting all the beats you gave me into one flowing narrative. The midday sun bore down on the opulent sprawl of the Five Poppies Resort, its pristine white walls and shimmering pools disguising the tension building beneath the surface. Vaughn's arrival was supposed to be low profile, just another guest checking in under a false name, but the air around him carried the kind of gravity that drew glances from the staff and whispers from other patrons. He wasn't here for the cocktails, the spa, or the postcard-perfect beaches. He was here with a singular, dangerous purpose, one that had been carefully constructed for weeks, each step reliant on timing and precision. But timing had a way of betraying even the most meticulous plans. Vaughn's eyes scanned the sprawling lobby as he passed bellhops and reception clerks, his posture betraying nothing of the fact that every sense was on alert. Somewhere in this labyrinth of palm-fringed courtyards and marble corridors was the contact he was supposed to meet, a man whose knowledge could tip the balance in the ongoing battle raging far from the luxury of the resort. Yet Vaughn knew he wasn't alone in seeking that information. Others had likely caught wind of the same lead, and not all of them were allies. The day's careful calm began to unravel in a corner of the courtyard cafe, where Britt had been seated with his back to the wall, quietly nursing an espresso and scanning the crowd. He spotted the stranger first, a tall man with an unnatural stillness, his gaze cutting across the cafe like a blade. Britt recognized the type instantly, someone sent to test boundaries, someone who would push until something broke. When their eyes met, the silent challenge escalated into words too low for the surrounding patrons to catch, but enough to ignite the spark of confrontation. What began as tense verbal sparring shifted quickly into violence. Chairs clattered to the ground as the two men collided, fists meeting flesh with sharp, echoing cracks that drew startled gasps. Guests backed away, some lifting phones to record, others retreating toward the safety of the resort's glass doors. Britt fought with controlled precision, but the other man's aggression had the uncoiled energy of someone who thrived on chaos. It wasn't about winning, it was about disruption. Joss, who had been shadowing Britt at a discreet distance, realized too late that the fight was more than a simple flare-up. She moved forward, intent on breaking the clash before it could draw security and blow their cover. Vaughn was still several paces away when she stepped in between the combatants, her voice sharp, her hands raised in a futile attempt to push them apart. The moment's hesitation was all it took for disaster to strike. A shove meant for Britt caught her instead, sending her sprawling back into the edge of a heavy wooden table. The sound of the impact seemed to freeze the air. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps as pain radiated through her side. Blood seeped through the light fabric of her shirt where the table's corner had struck, and the severity of the injury was immediately clear. The mission, the secrecy, the careful planning, all of it collapsed in an instant as instinct overrode strategy. Britt was at her side in seconds, Vaughn right behind him, their eyes locking in a grim understanding. The stranger melted into the crowd as security rushed forward, but neither Britt nor Vaughn had the luxury of pursuit. Joss's safety came first. The journey to the hospital was a blur of flashing lights and clipped exchanges with medics who didn't care about the secrecy of missions or the stakes of international information warfare. In the sterile brightness of the emergency room, the smell of antiseptic replacing the resort's salt-tinged air, the reality settled in: the operation was compromised. Joss's injury meant they couldn't continue as planned, and their enemies would know that. Meanwhile, far from the chaotic hum of the hospital, another thread of the tangled tapestry was unraveling. Josslyn had been tracking a different lead, his relentless search for Britt pushing him across borders and through hostile territories. Days without rest had left him hollow-eyed but no less determined. Every hour lost to delays felt like another door closing, another shadow falling over the slim chance of finding her alive. His latest trail had led him to a remote airstrip where his arrival drew no applause, no welcome committee, only the stillness of heat-shimmered tarmac and the distant hum of propellers. Josslyn had heard whispers about the Five Poppies Resort, about the people moving quietly in and out of its luxury suites under false identities. It wasn't his primary target, but intelligence had a way of tangling paths. The name Vaughn had surfaced once before, attached to an encrypted message that made no mention of him but carried the kind of urgency that stayed with Josslyn. He didn't yet know how close his path would run to Vaughn's or how quickly the events at the resort would bleed into his own mission. Back at the hospital, Britt remained by Joss's side, his expression a mask of control that didn't quite hide the tension coiled beneath. Vaughn stood by the door, one hand on his phone, murmuring into the receiver as he arranged for transport, secure rooms, and contingencies. The mission's original objective was beyond salvage for now, but Vaughn knew abandoning it entirely wasn't an option. The contact they'd been meant to meet wouldn't wait forever, and neither would their adversaries. For Joss, the sterile ceiling above her seemed to tilt and sway as pain and disorientation warred with the adrenaline still in her system. She hated the thought of being sidelined, of becoming the weak link in a chain that had been forged in trust and necessity. But the deep ache in her ribs and the shallow pull of her breathing told her that stubbornness wouldn't be enough to get her back into the field. Josslyn's journey was still unfolding miles away, but the lines were already converging. The Five Poppies Resort was no longer just a waypoint on Vaughn's map. It was becoming a node in a larger network of danger, secrets, and shifting alliances. Josslyn's search for Britt would bring him closer to that point, whether by chance or by the invisible hands pulling threads across the board. The fight in the cafe, Joss's injury, the vanished assailant, all of it was part of a sequence that would demand answers, and soon. In the quiet moments between the rush of medics and the hum of hospital machines, Vaughn considered the cost of pressing forward. The luxury of hesitation was gone, and the people who had tried to derail their mission would no doubt strike again. Somewhere beyond the hospital walls, the enemy regrouped, their work unfinished. And somewhere else entirely, Josslyn was closing in on a lead that might tie their separate battles into one. The resort's glittering facade had hidden its shadows well, but the events of the day had torn that veil wide open. The mission had not just been hindered, it had been altered, reshaped by violence, urgency, and the ever-present risk that came with chasing truths in a world built on lies. If you want, I can now expand this even further to weave Jason's search and the Five Poppies storyline into one continuous, high-stakes arc, so the final piece flows like an official General Hospital episode recap with even deeper character connections. That would easily push it beyond 12,000 characters. Do you want me to do that next?